welcome to the industry program of the MAMI Mumbai Film Festival. We are here with our community partners, Soho House Mumbai. The industry program has been put together by MAMI in support with Soho House. So, yeah, we've had pretty much houseful sessions since morning. We started the day with a session on storytelling at the cinemas, followed by short filmmaking. Then we went to the whole legal angle of what independent filmmakers should look for when they're looking at contracts and stuff. And yeah, here we are. Well, we talked about filmmaking being it takes a village to make a film earlier in the day, and apart from that also the whole idea of how meticulous planning is so important and key to a production, any production for that matter, and more so independent filmmaking. And it takes so many people and so many elements to put it all together and also put it creatively together to tell the story. And that's why the title Style along with Substance, where you actually bring everyone together to tell your story in the best and most economic possible way without compromising on your vision. So we have some very, very key players, filmmakers, post-production, production. So, well, to start off with, we have Amit Masurkar. He's the director of Suleimani Kida, Newton, Shevni. We have Naren Chandavarkar, who's composer, music designer, composer, sound designer, and also producer. Sidharth Meer, who is which works closely on post-production, grading. And joining us from over the airwaves and sea across the 7 oceans is Parul Sondh. She's a production designer. And steering the conversation is Suchin, who is a critic and film writer. So over to you.
Thank you. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to all of you. It is wonderful to have you at another year. Hi, Parul. Is that any better? Can you hear us now?
Yeah, hi. The thing is that I'm actually behind you, so whenever you talk, I'm actually, so it's a little, yeah, but I can hear a little bit more now.
Okay, we will try and be as clear as possible and hope for the best. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's fine, it's fine.
Firstly, thank you for joining us. I know, we really appreciate you being here. I wanted to use this session with all of you to talk as a sort of advice session to sort of independent filmmakers. Maybe I'm someone who's embarking on my first short film, first feature film, and it's wonderful to be able to pick all of your brains. In particular, I think your combined filmographies would be responsible for the majority of meaningful Indian indies over the last few years. So I'm very glad to be able to do this. So I'm going to dive straight in. If I am a filmmaker embarking on my first film, I have very limited budgets and resources. Are there any kind of sort of obvious hacks and tips you guys could give in terms of achieving a sense, call it scale, call it style, call it production value, and to not be limited by what I don't have? And if there's any sort of specific examples from your previous work that you guys might want to throw in, what are the kinds of tips and tricks that a filmmaker might use?
I mean, I can go first. I think one of the most asked questions is, can I actually shoot on the iPhone? And I think 99% of the time I've actually said no. Because dealing with that material in post isn't easy, and although we kind of have demonstrated that you can get good images out of it, like we did something recently, these 4 short films, which were like this collaboration with Apple, and there was one film for Vishal Bharadwaj before that, but it is difficult to work with, and I've always kind of recommended using maybe something like a Sony FX3. Because we've seen over, I think, the last couple of years, you've had like a giant science fiction film release in IMAX, The Creative. It was actually shot on the FX3. So you kind of push people to just spend that little bit more, because honestly speaking, if you're going to go for the iPhone, you're going to get like the 1 TV model. It's going to cost you like $1.5 lakh.
Somebody needs to tell Sean Baker that.
And you'd probably need 4 of them, at the minimum. And you could probably get a full kit of an FX3 with lenses in pretty much that kind of money.
No, I love that because I feel like it's every filmmaker's go-to line at a masterclass these days at a festival. They say, if you have an iPhone, go for it. So that's very useful. Naren, do you want to go? Any sort of obvious tips and tricks that come to mind for a first-time filmmaker?
I'd say it's the most important thing. I don't know if it's a tip or a trick, but it's really about casting the right team, finding the HODs that really understand what you're trying to achieve and understand what it is to put an indie film together. Because an indie film is really a different beast from other kinds of films, and depending on where they're working, people are usually wrestling with many other projects at the same time. And the biggest asset, especially in post-production, that you can have is time. So making sure that you go out and see films that maybe have a similar aesthetic that you're trying to achieve, and reach out to those HODs. And even if they're not available, they can guide you to people who might be the right fit for you. And then getting to know them, because these are people who are going to be compatriots with you in lonely rooms for a very long period of time. So making sure that they're in for the long haul, because once there's no really like one size fits all kind of tip or trick that works, especially with sound or music. So there are very many things that you can custom make for a particular project, and usually that involves that HOD jumping into many different roles. So you have a sound designer who's also going to do your dialogue cleanup, who's going to do your pre-mix. You have composers who are also going to be your arranger, and many other things in one. So it's really making sure that you align on that, and you have someone who's willing to put in that extra time through the entire project. Similar sort of thing to the iPhone is that I'd say for location and for your recording is to really, I would say, try and see if you can make sure you get, if it's a dialogue heavy film, make sure you're recording dialogue properly, and do not leave anything for a dub. Nothing will really bring the quality of a film down faster than that. So that involves obviously a lot of planning with your sound designer and your HOD, whoever that might be, on a script level, on a recce level, and through that entire process to make sure you can get clean dialogue. Yeah, so I'd say that if you can go that little bit of an extra mile to make sure that's something that you don't skimp on, I'd say that's really important.
Speaking of location, Parul, we will come to you from a sort of production design perspective or costume perspective. What are the things an indie filmmaker can do when they have limited resources to achieve a sense of scale? We'll come back to her. Okay, I will remember everything I just said in that order. Amit, over to you. So what are the things that come to mind?
For me, I had written several scripts, and they were all in the regular budget category. And I wanted to make my first film, directed myself, and didn't have any cash. So I made a list of things that were available to me, which is something I learned from Robert Rodriguez, who did that on El Mariachi. And all of our lists will be different, Some of you might have access to certain things that others might not have access to. But if you're making a story which is personal, which has some element of you in it, then these will be things that will be available to you. And this includes people whom you're going to cast, That's very important. These are people who should be able to give you time. And whatever little money you have has to be spent judiciously. For us, that was, like he said, sound. We spent money on sound, like getting the right equipment. We had to pay the boom person and recording it in the right way possible. And the first AD, So we needed a very good first AD because we were shooting everything in 15, 16 days. And somebody to plan that. And everyone else were friends and people trying to build their careers. So we were all working pro bono, which is not recommended, by the way. But if that's the way to go, we had no choice. And another important thing is locations, Like sometimes you need certain things which will make your film look bigger. Like if you watched my first film, Suleimani Kira, we had shot at Sivri Fort, which was shot without permission, but we needed a certain light. And that light was there only between 7 and 8. So we had to shoot that whole sequence in 1 hour, which meant we had to go there and rehearse it with the whole crew once. And we knew that the cops came at a certain time to check. So we had to shoot it in that window and wrap it up quickly and go without any lights. We knew where the light was coming from. So yeah, prep. So if there are certain scenes that require something big to be seen, then you need to do that amount of prep.
I do want to ask you about that idea of writing to your budget. But I think first, Parul, can you hear us now? Parul, if you can hear us, I was just asking you, if I'm a first-time filmmaker, I have limited resources, what are the things I can do from a production design or costume perspective to achieve a sense of scale or style and go beyond the means I have access to?
Yeah, so basically, how you kind of do that is, in general, in a film. Wow, 1 second, I can really hear a lot of me.
Not a bad thing.
So, in a film, you have multiple locations, and when you have limited budget, what you do is you kind of classify the locations which are going to be shown again and again, which are probably your action locations, your action house. And that's where you plan your budget. You plan your budget around that, and you kind of figure out how you can, with the resources you have, how you can put in all that, put the quality in those locations, and then you kind of, for the rest of the locations, you see how you can figure out with the real resources, the resources available in the location. You know what I mean? So basically that is how, at least I have approached all my independent projects, and I've done a lot of them. And usually that's how I classify where and how I can give that quality. And also for me, I think it's very important that just because you have lesser budget does not really mean that your production design is also going to be very, it's not going to be larger than your budget. Like in Daddy, which is a period film that I did in 2016, we didn't really have a lot of money for the vision that Osham had for the film. It's a very expansive film. It covers 4 decades. And for that, what we really did was that we made one really big set in Versova, Kolivara, which was a Dagri Chawl set. And then in that set, we created studio stages. By that I mean that in different portions of that set, we kind of knocked out different scenes that were not in relation to Dagri Chawl also. So you just kind of have to start planning. You just have to kind of see where the money is going and how you can kind of, expand that in terms of design as well. Like what all can you do in that location and how you can knock that off, I think. That's what at least I have done.
But what about permissions? If I don't have much of a budget or resources, I'm looking at real locations. Amit, you mentioned this as well. Are there any hacks to either finding permissions or circumnavigating permissions? What are the things you can do?
Yeah, so that usually happens all the time because I've worked a lot in real locations and made them into sets. So the permission comes from the production part of it, and usually even if you get the production, sometimes something happens and then your location goes. Then what happens is you have to quickly find another location. You have to quickly figure out how to design that location in a way how you had thought about the other location which is no longer there. So permissions, all of this is, there are no real resources as such. If you don't get a permission, you just have to find another location and you have to rebuild whatever you had thought of in the location you don't really have right now. So it's pretty much, it's like that. It's quick thinking. It's kind of like, making your design work with whatever you have, and also convincing the filmmaker, which is a big responsibility and a big part of my job, that yes, this can happen in the same way in this other location. So yeah, that's how we kind of do it.
That makes sense. Amit, what about you? Any sort of location hacks?
These hacks I had to use in my first film, but after that we always had permissions, like with.
But that's you, like.
No, not me, because when you have when you work with bigger actors, you need vanities and their crews,
But what about for people making their Suleimani?
So if you're making indie stuff, then if you don't have a crew, it's just you, your DP, your actor, and one sound recordist. Then I don't really think. See, you're not bothering anyone. You're not going and you're not blocking roads. I think you should take a risk. There's no pay the fine if you get caught.
Budget for the fines.
Yeah.
On a film that we'd done, Sid and I worked on recently, one thing that the filmmakers had done, this was set in Barakpur outside of Kolkata, is that they went there about a couple months early. And they use this as a time to, fine-tune the script, work on the dialogue, and also as part of the casting. But what they ended up doing was just taking long walks around the neighborhood and just befriending, people and getting to know them and spending a lot of time getting to know them. But it wasn't a very quick transactional relationship, but actually making meaningful connections. And through that, we managed to get a whole bunch of locations almost free or at a very low cost, which were real locations, real houses, real places, real schools, and things like that. And it came from just involving people as part of the process, making them feel like they're collaborators, making them feel like it wasn't a transactional relationship, but really like bringing them on board. And that really worked. And another thing that also helped was finding someone local who has that kind of connection or has that kind of relationships built in that neighborhood, because they also can provide that level of access to places that you may not have had. Here it was easier because one of the filmmakers grew up in that neighborhood, so it helped. Yeah.
Naren, you also talked about sort of finding the right HODs, and I imagine a big part of this process is finding the right set of badass artists, assembling your Avengers. So if I wanted to do that, I guess there's two parts to this. Can I pitch to you guys? If I am someone who doesn't have much money, can I pitch to you guys to help me? Or what is the right and wrong way to go about that? Or alternatively, how do I find sort of a hungry up-and-comer, whether it's a composer, whether it's a colorist, a production designer? How do I go about finding the right collaborators? Sid, do you want to go?
Yeah, I think what me and Naren do is we end up actually attending a few markets. Like, say, we'd go to the co-production market. That's how we found Shrimoy's film, as well as Rohan's film. And basically, we try and seek out stories that we want to be a part of. And then there are a lot of times that people actually reach out, and their pitch is usually, pretty simple, that, they don't have a certain amount of budget, but there's something that can be worked out. And yes, definitely there is something that can be worked on, and there are different models that we can work on just to make sure that we can achieve their vision in the kind of budget that they have. So, I mean, I don't think there should be any, reason why you shouldn't reach out to any one of us. I think everyone here is open to receiving, good ideas, and everyone here is hungry to work on good scripts.
What's the right way to reach out? Are we sliding into your DMs? Like, what's the wrong way to do it? Like, how do you guys want to?
Forums like these and markets and going to that kind of place is definitely helpful, because then you have people who are coming there with that idea. But sending an email, just reaching out, I think is in any ways fine. I'd say the way to, at least for me, is not looking for anyone, in the sense that looking for someone who you really feel like there's a reason why you want them to be a part of your project. And that's got to do with their body of work, or more importantly, it's got to do with believing in your own project, really believing that you have something in what you're doing, and making that, if that's palpable, if that's in the script or in how you put it together or how you talk to someone else about it, if you believe in someone in your project and you've really put that kind of craft into making that reality to making that reality happen, I'd say it's about like also believing in that and casting the people you feel can make that vision work, because immediately someone will know you've come to them for a reason, and not just because hey, this person knows what they're doing, hopefully, but it's I really want to collaborate with you as an artist. I feel like there's some possible kind of synergy there, and I think that's obviously very inviting for anyone who wants to work.
Parul, what about you? Is there a right way you like to be reached out to or not?
Yeah, I think for me, the most important part is the screenplay. So when a filmmaker comes, or even for that matter, approaches me to do a project, it's also like the passion, how invested the filmmaker is in his script, for sure. And secondly, the screenplay, if that's exciting, then you kind of, then the budget, then it's all right. Then you don't mind being part of a project in which, you are going to tell a story that you relate to, or it kind of like aligns with your politics. And then you find ways to do it. So I have done really tiny projects also, and I've done big projects also. And I feel like it really is the power of the screenplay for me. And even when I'm hiring people, I think that is pretty much what I kind of sell. I always sell the screenplay, even if it's from production design or even if it's me getting hired. So I think, for me, I think that's the most important part.
It's all about the writing. But speaking of screenplay, Amit, I wanted to ask you, this idea of making your first film and writing to your budget, what you were saying about look at what you have access to. This gets thrown around a lot, and I wanted to ask you what that looks like, because how do I find that balance if I know what I have access to, but I also want to tell a story? How do I be realistic about the film I can make, but not limit my imagination, and find that happy mix between storytelling and logistical reality check?
You might have access to the biggest producer in Bombay, so it all depends on your access, what you have access to. I tried for 4 or 5 years to get other films made, and it didn't work out. Didn't want to work with the wrong people, because I've been part of projects where I've seen what happens to films where the director, producer, and actors are not on the same page. So I was very protective of my story. So this was the best thing I could do to my story, like have complete creative control. So that is one thing I've never, like that is something that is the most dearest to me. Not letting go of guarding your film ferociously, not letting other agendas take over. So not just for your first film, your second, third, fourth, fifth, these battles will never stop, unless and until you make a 800 crore film, so you'll have to work with the right people. You'll have to be very cognizant of what your budget is and work within that. For a first film, I would say I did it that way because I couldn't think of any other way.
But is there a way to, if okay, I have access to this, now I need to find an exciting story that fits this? How do you navigate that?
You can find a story in anything, Stories are all around. You just need to get interested in that thing. Suppose you have access to Soho House. You can set up a story right here.
I think if you have access to Soho House, you're good.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. Yeah, it's good.
That's right. You're plugging in membership.
That's just honest. I think you'll be fine. And Sid, Naren, with both of you, because people consider that as part of the post-production process. What's the right stage to reach out to you guys? Because I'm assuming ideally you want someone to reach out to you before they go into production, when the script is ready, so it doesn't become an afterthought. So what's the right way to do it? And what's the right way to, what if I don't know how to brief? What if I know the story I want to tell, but maybe I don't have the right language of the look of the film or the music I'm going for? How do I find a way of having and communicating exactly what I want?
I think it starts in prep, and I've been very fortunate that there are a lot of projects that I've been part of where I've been invited to be part of prep. I've been there for the script read with the actors. Filmmakers have been open to suggestions even during that period. So been very lucky to have those kinds of collaborators, and that's when the story and the film really shines, when you actually are able to contribute right at the start and not leave anything to the end. We've had so many films where we've given just like tiny suggestions which have had like a huge impact later down the line.
Naren, what about you?
Yeah, I'd say the earlier the better. In fact, I think a filmmaker I know was recently at a script lab where they had paired screenwriters with music composers, so that you can really start to think about music when you're writing, because even the way your visual language of the film or your short breakdown of the film will come from those, how you're treating time in your film will come from where you feel you're leaving space for music or sound. And that, I think the earlier you start that questioning, that process, and the earlier you can invite collaborators into that process, the more symbiotic and rich that relationship can be. Both in terms of the creative possibilities that can open up, and also just in terms of practical kind of planning. So I'd say the earlier the better. At a script level would be ideal, and allowing for even collaboration at that time it can really be beneficial. There are a number of films where we've written thematic material on the basis of reading the script itself. I'd say the worst thing to do is to, which is what often happens, is that usually you go through an edit process and you have what's called temp music, which is like temporary music that's done to edit to, and with the idea that it'll change later, and inviting composers to come in after that. Because essentially what you're doing then is you've created a structure.
You're limiting yourself.
Yeah, you're limiting you've shoehorned the composers to sort of shoehorn into something that's already made. And if something has to change, again, there's more resources because you have to go back to the edit table. But if it's happening at an earlier stage, then there's just so much more of an open playing field, Because with temp music, you're saying this is the mood, this is the tempo, this is the structure. All of that's almost already done. And that can really limit what's possible.
There's a term you used in an interview, which I thought was quite wonderful. It's finding the musical identity of your film. But I wanted to ask you, from a music and sound perspective, when you're watching films, it could be a mainstream film, or I guess in this case, an indie film, do you have any specific turn-offs, a specific sort of typical trope that people rely on that immediately just puts you off, that you feel is just a very common pitfall on a storytelling level that people rely on too much?
I feel, the biggest thing for me is not respecting your audience. Not having faith.
Spoon feeding.
In some level, but also just trying to a passive versus an active experience. And I think the more with sound or music, the more you take someone up to a point, and you let them make that last decision or that last thought or that last action by themselves. So that could be something as simple as like a piece of music entering a few seconds earlier or later, or something more fundamental about what the role of sound or music in that project would be. But on a fundamental level, it would be that, as well as like not mirroring what you already have. You have a tremendous opportunity with music to create something so abstract that's, it could be anything. So there's a chance to really fill something that's not there with any other department in a very profound way. So really trying to find the way you can explore that in a way that's unique to that particular script, to that particular film, to that particular feeling, that particular mood. It's, there's just endless possibility there.
Without forcing people to feel a certain way.
Yeah, without like narrowing it into just one thing. Yeah.
Parul, I wanted to ask you about something you said in an interview, which I thought was very interesting. Because, in your world of production design, it's almost invisible. If you do your job incredibly well, it's almost invisible to the audience, but it helps us immerse into that world. You said that apart from just creating that world, production design is also about creating a world where the actors are comfortable and sort of bought into that. I was curious to know more about that. So you're not always just thinking about the audience and the visuals of the film. You're also thinking about the actors performing to sort of feel like, I just wanted to understand what your approach is there.
Yes, I actually think about, like I said, I think about the screenplay. And my main job is to kind of give a spatial context to the narrative. So that also means that when the actors come on the set, they feel that they are part of that environment, That also means to kind of like play with design elements and make it so immersive that you feel that you are that personality, to give those props, to give those details, and those backstories that kind of make it so immersive, not only for the audience, not only for the viewer, but also for the actors, because it's so important for the actors to feel that they are in this world, because they're not really from that world where they play or what they play. So as a production designer, I think it is kind of my responsibility to make sure that I am building an immersive environment like that, with different with design elements like color, texture, props, form, so that it's just a world in which you feel a part of it, you act a part of it, and I think that is when storytelling and action becomes very seamless, and that's when you are one with the environment. And it's not like, oh, but that person doesn't really fit in here, or this environment doesn't fit in with that person. So that also means like all the production departments coming together, like production design normally also works with costume, makeup, and also the DOP, very, very important. So all of that actually comes together, and that is what I think creates an immersive environment for everyone. Not only for just the actors or the viewer, for even the director, the DOP. Like I feel that whichever technician comes on the set should feel that, they are in that world of the story that they are telling. That's what I feel.
No, it's a wonderful perspective. I never thought about it that way, that you're creating a world for the people on set as well. I also wanted to ask all of you, when we talk about indie films, so much of craft and style is talked about fiction, but non-fiction is not really talked about much, and there is so much interesting craft being used there, especially these days. Indian documentaries are really having a moment. So how would you approach that from a craft perspective, whether it's sort of visually or music, etc.? Because craft is not something that people immediately associate with documentaries, but there is so much you can do there, but you also don't want to make it too stagey. So how do you approach non-fiction?
I mean, it's a fine balance. You don't really want to throw the viewer, out of it. Like, there is a certain amount of truth in the story, and you don't want to make them believe that it's all made up. So there is a fine balance, but every project is different, and there are some which require a certain amount of style and an extra flourish, just because the story is that large or the character that is being interviewed is that large. So you kind of judge based on the story, and then you kind of take it from there.
Yeah, similar. I don't know if there's a, to be honest, I mean, I was just trying to think about it. I don't know if there's a difference in approach from a documentary to a fiction film. I mean, there may be some things in terms of like a specific film requiring a certain kind of treatment. Like the last documentary that Sid and I had worked on, we had a chat while we were working early on where we felt like this was Shrimoy's documentary and towards Happy Allies, where we knew very early on that we wanted to keep a certain level of rawness in how the film was made, because in how the film was presented, because that's how the film was made. So it wasn't about adding too much polish or anything like that. But I think it's really much like any fiction film. It changes from one project to another. You may have something that you'd use as an approach in a documentary that you'd use as easily in an approach to a fiction film, and vice versa, and one documentary not to another, and so on. So I don't know if there's something specific.
Amit, I know you've not made a documentary film, but I'd love your perspective as well. When it comes to sort of style and non-fiction, how, what would be your approach to it? And is there something is too much? Because, as an audience, sometimes we do get put off where it feels like something is too staged. No, so what, if I was making a documentary film and I wanted to, achieve a sense of craft and style, what sort of advice would you have on the right way to go about it?
I don't think there's any right way to go about it, So just make it the way you feel like making it. Yeah. What advice will I give to a documentary filmmaker?
Sorry.
So one thing that I'd add for a documentary that's really, I think, ends up being quite difficult, especially if it's a documentary that's being made over a long period of time, is very often the filmmaker themselves is all the departments in one. You can often have a documentary where the filmmaker is the DOP, is the sound recordist, and so on. So at an early stage, figuring out how best to handle sound can really help. So whether that's a workshop with a sound designer or a location person, and making sure you set up your equipment in a way that allows for that level of flexibility, but also make sure you capture. It's not just one zoom recorder, whether it's a camera mount, or you make sure every every one of your characters or your protagonists have lapels when you need them to, or whatever it may be, depending on how you're choosing to film. I think that level of planning of involving your sound designer or a collaborator who can guide you through the technicality of how you can be mobile and agile, but still capture sound well is really, really important, because then, but you can't fix it in post.
Despite what people say. Speaking of fixing things, I have to talk about the shitty elephant in the room, which is AI. I think it just feels like the death of all creativity, but in a world where it is apparently helpful on an execution level, and if I am someone with limited resources approaching my first film, etc., what I want to ask all of you what your thoughts are. Are there areas that you feel it can be useful, that people should be sort of learning about it more? Or is this something that you feel that it should be completely stayed away from? Because if it is helping me limit my budget and achieve more, should I be considering it? Sid, do you want to go?
I think I've seen a lot of people actually use Midjourney, DALL-E to create concept art, which I think really helps kind of sell it. So if you're actually trying to sell something to an investor or financer, and if you're able to spell out your vision really clearly using those tools, because with limited resources, obviously you cannot hire like a really expensive storyboard artist or a concept artist. But this is something that, just with keywords and phrases, you could actually make something that is half decent, which can, be good for presentation. I mean, we personally use it in our toolkit as well. We've used it extensively on Jigra because we have those tools available now. So there are machine learning models to track faces, and like throughout the film, like Alia's face, all the eyes have been tracked, sharpened, brightened, and all of that is literally like one click now. So earlier you would have an artist who would sit, at night actually when the main colorist isn't in the room, and sit and actually, track every single eyeball. But now it's become so much more quicker for us to actually do our job.
And what about sort of, for a first-time filmmaker, are there any AI tools I should be looking at? I hate asking this question, but is there anything that, and where does creativity end and execution begin? Like, how do you find that balance?
the AI tools that we've been using in sound are more on a technical level. They don't really get into a creative aspect, but I mean, of course, it's a bit scary because the better they get, there are jobs that I would they'd spend a lot less time getting them executed. So, I mean, there's AI tools like Hush for dialogue cleanup, which are incredible. I mean, with the click of a button, you have a process that would normally take 3 or 4 hours with better results than that 3 or 4 hour process would give you. So, I mean, that is it. I understand the fear. Of course, there are jobs at stake here, but for an independent filmmaker, or if you don't have limited resources, or like I mentioned, if it's an HOD where you're jumping across many different roles at the same time, it does really free up a lot of time to work on creative elements. So I don't know about the AI solving creative problems, but it certainly can help you in what would be more routine processes, free up time for creativity. So I see that changing, especially with things like dialogue cleanup, reverb, and even in cases with creating sounds. The other day we needed some specific kind of foley of a certain kind of footstep across a jute surface and barefoot footstep, and the Foley artist hadn't sent that in, and we used an AI footstep generator just online. It was a free tool. I just typed in a prompt.
I didn't know there was an AI footstep generator.
I mean, it was an AI sound generator. It was a free model online, and we just typed it in, and we mixed it with a couple sounds, but it was good. It was better than some of the Foley we had, but obviously it doesn't fix a performance, it doesn't remove the creative element of it, but there can be these sort of like little problems that you can fix, which can save time and open up time for more, creative exploration.
That's a hopeful way of looking at it, for sure. Amit, what about you? Is AI the death of things, or is it here to make storytelling easier?
Depends on you. I've used Midjourney to create presentations, and it's easier. It's just easier than, for me at least. Coming up with images for the presentation that are specific to your story. But apart from that, I've dabbled with this Chat GPT.
For what?
Just to see what's around.
Okay.
Sometimes you put in something to see what are the different possibilities your story can go into. It's just a tool. You don't have to be scared of it, and it's not going to. I don't think people send me synopses written on Chat GPT. I can make out there's certain words which is so Chat GPT.
You can see a Chat GPT
You can
email.
see it. Yeah, it's not something that really, and these are things that they're taking from various sources and they're making it into one thing, so it's nothing original. So if you want to come up with something that is personal to you, you can't depend on Chat GPT. Chat GPT can probably give you 1 or 2 new ideas, like 10 ways to murder someone. So it'll come up with, something maybe you haven't thought of, That's it. Beyond
You're a very
that,
violent algorithm.
I was working on a detective.
That makes sense. Maybe start with that, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think it's that big a deal, and especially for writers. But there are producers that are using ChatGPT to come up with ideas and all. But I don't think anything's going to happen with it. Like they'll still need a writer to make the work better and more personal.
The way you said it is like if you want to make something personal, something that doesn't suck, you probably can't use ChatGPT, but then I guess the fear is, what if you want to make something generic, which is the...
Make it, who cares, like people are... 9 out of 10 films are flopping.
Yeah.
So you'll beat one of those 9.
Yeah. Parul, what about you? Does AI feature in your world at all?
Not at the moment, but I think AI is here to stay. And I think it's going to come slowly and take over everything. Me personally, I would not really mind a software in which the execution happens and I don't have to manage 200, 300 people, because I really have a lot of people in my department. So I personally would look forward to that software. But in terms of if you have a software where you could do your creative prompts individually, and then you can execute it without managing so many people, I think I'm all for it. Because that's kind of like individual, personal, but yet the execution is happening by the AI or through AI. But that I think is going to take some time to come. Right now, I don't think it's just for concept art and Illustrator, Photoshop. Your Adobe Suite has it. But I don't think it's really in moving images it's come in yet. But I'm sure it will.
I guess it's that difference between creativity and execution again.
One thing I'd like to add, though, is just on the production kind of side of things, is that AI can be really useful for research. So especially when it's navigating the film, the more industry side of things, if it's something that's new to you, you're going to a market, who are sales agents, what are the latest PR firms for this festival, who are more common PR firms, who are people that I can look at for this kind of sales agent, what have they done in the past for this particular kind of film, what have been, I'm making a noir space, a sci-fi film, what are all the noir sci-fi films, and who are the sales agents for each one. You may not necessarily get, you still have to proof check everything, there are a lot of errors, but it can be a great start. And at least when there have been moments for me where I've been a bit at a loss of where to start and where to look, and it, with Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or any of them, you can really, it can help what makes a really daunting, what seemed like a really daunting world, and you just get like 4 recommendations. You at least feel like, okay, there's a place to start. Obviously, you have to do your research and build from there, but it can be really useful for that kind of thing.
Maybe then there are 10 other people doing the same thing, so you need to do something extra.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to use extra AI.
Yeah, extra AI.
I have a bunch of other questions, but first I will give an opportunity to anyone here who wants to ask a question. There are a few. Sid, do you want
sorry, can I? There was something that I wanted to ask Parul,
Yeah,
if I
please.
may. Yeah,
Please.
because she's worked as on production design of the film The Shameless, which
Yeah.
is being, screened
MAMI this
at
year.
MAMI. Yes. So it'd be lovely if she could talk about her experience. That's all right.
Parul, did you get that? Yeah.
Yeah, to say something about Shameless?
Yes. As both production designer and costume designer, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Well, and also helping Constantine translate the English dialogues, and also doing a lot of things basically. No, it was an interesting project because it's an Indian story told by a Bulgarian filmmaker who basically started this journey from a documentary which he was making some 12 years back. And it took him those many years to get various producers in Europe to come together to raise the finance for this film. And so when I came on board, I think somewhere in 21. We were planning to shoot it in India, in Maharashtra, very conventional, kind of like a setting. And then we didn't get permissions, etc., etc. So we shifted our entire production to Kathmandu. And that is what I say, like when you start appreciating spaces in cinema and kind of start trusting your production designer, you can also kind of reinvent the way you see your project as a filmmaker. And I think what it did, well, when we shifted from India to Kathmandu, it has given an extremely, Kathmandu is a very cinematic place. I don't know if you guys have been there, but you should. It's actually a very beautiful place. It's got beautiful texture, color pops. And in general, it just opened up, it just gave us so many ideas to create this universe, which is of this, the underbelly, the prostitutes, Devadasis, all of that in a very imaginative way. So I think this is where I personally feel that the cinema space kind of navigated the way the story would be told. And Constantine was really very comfortable with kind of, molding his screenplay according to the spaces which we were finding and the spaces which we shot in. So yeah, please go watch Shameless.
Shameless is screening this week a couple of times. So yes, make sure you guys check it out.
Yes. And of course, like when you work on costumes as a production designer, what it gives you is a full control over your palette, your texture, and also your entire visual imagery in a way, because, you are styling the characters, you are really getting into I really found it the most interesting way of working in production design is maybe to kind of do costumes as well, because then, you are creating the entire universe. With all the context possible, spatial, cultural, emotional, everything. I think it was a fantastic experience working on Shameless. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Make sure you guys check out the movie this week. With that, we will open it up.
Hi. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and all your experience with all of us. Thank you, Mami. Thank you, Soho House. This is a question on color. You asked a question as to what tropes really put you off in low budget filmmaking, or like what hacks, what doesn't work. Sid, my question is, in terms of color, what are very amateur mistakes that we as filmmakers, cinematographers should avoid? It's like clearly visible that, something is off here in terms of color.
I think it's really one of the things that kind of tricks up the camera sometimes is usually like patterns. So, and this has been going on for like a while, and because we only use digital cameras now, there's very little film being used. Just like fine textures, this is something that kind of is a problem fixing, and you can't really fix it without like a VFX cleanup. Apart from that, I think color-wise, everyone's kind of gotten a good hang of things. I mean, I've not really seen like badly shot material come into the last few years. I mean, maybe I've just been lucky, but yeah, I think everything that's been coming in has been really, really good.
Oh, hi, sir. I'm Sid. I'm a director. My question, I'm sort of in that jugaad phase of filmmaking right now. And my question really is to all of you about the collaborative nature of it. So quite often in most of my student films, I've been the guy who writes, directs, edits, acts, color grades, does the sound, and also does the production design. So my question really is, at what point do I draw a line? Just because I can, does it mean should I do it? I mean, it's a genuine question because I'm like, if I can save money, I'll just do it myself. But I'm also somewhere realizing that I'm compromising. I don't know.
I think you're very passionate about all aspects of filmmaking. That's a great thing. Yeah, I think I envy you. That's amazing that you can do color grading and act and shoot and edit. You should continue doing it. No, I'm not joking at all.
Yeah, actually, interestingly, me and Amit met like 23 years ago, and we worked on our own short films at the Kalakuda 24/7 festival. We did everything ourselves. Yeah, we didn't
I
have
didn't
any
act
help.
in it though, but I
Yeah,
really
we didn't
think,
act
I
in it,
think
but
it's a
otherwise
great
everything.
thing. You should do it. Rima does it. Yeah, Rima does. If you saw her films, if you watched Village Rockstars 2 also, she doesn't act, but she does. She shoots, she edits, she directs, she writes.
So do as much as you can before
Yeah.
collapsing.
I
Doesn't
don't
find
think
the
she-
line.
I think it all depends on you because if it gives him energy, at the end of the day, it's about feeling good. If there's one aspect that you don't enjoy doing, suppose you don't I don't enjoy editing. I get scared of editing, So I always have a very good editor whom I give the footage to, and I. So that's something that scares me. So if there's something that you don't enjoy doing, then you find someone else to do it. Find the right people. So.
Next question.
Did you direct or did you shoot Varun's film? Sorry. Varun Grover's film? No. No. That was also Apurva, right? No. Archana. Okay. You want to start?
So the question was, how do you make something more stylish with a limited budget? Is that right? Okay.
As a DP. I think choose your lens, the lens that you're using. Make sure they're the ones that are the right ones for the film, according to that's one of the things I would say, and a lot will depend on your production designer, like the production designer you team with, because that can make or break the film. You need to make sure that everybody's on the right page. So a lot of discussions with the director. If the director is not really understanding your worries, then make sure you're very vocal about them and make sure they get addressed. So it's all since you're in charge of the look, it's not just you, it's also the other departments and the actors, which unfortunately you won't have control over. But
Parul, any advice from you on working with a DOP to achieve a certain style?
Yeah, I think if you want to kind of make your project look hyper realistic, you need to kind of make it stylized. And by that, I mean you work on the colors, the textures, and the materials that you're going to use that do not require a lot of budget, but definitely requires a production designer who understands where you're coming from and stylizes it for you. And works with the costumier or is the costume person and does it for you. So I think styling is also a very personal skill set, I feel. I mean, you got to work with production designers who understand how to create stylish spaces or stylized spaces using, again, the elements of design. So those elements are always not very expensive, but you just need to kind of see how it works with the DOP, how you can kind of accentuate it. Like in Shameless, again, we didn't have too much of money, but we have made full-blown sets in Kathmandu. I mean, like completely raising real locations and making full-blown sets. And the DOP and the gaffer had an excellent gaffer who kind of made it, if you see the film, it's really very stylized. It's also because of the way the color, the light is being used, So the lighting also, I think, can really just elevate your entire, take you to this hyper-realistic, stylized world. So yeah, I think it's your production designer, gaffer, DOP, costume, basically everyone. So yeah.
Next question. Somebody has a mic?
Hello, hi. I'm Arushi. I have just written and directed and produced a short film. I was wondering if you all have any perspective on managing the hats of a director and a producer, because as a writer-director, you're always leaning towards the creative aspects, you're protecting that story, you're protecting the art, but as the producer, you have to, really sell on the business aspects of things, what's trending and what's sellable, and so it's quite,
Tricky balance.
yeah. So if anyone hasn't ever, worn that hat.
Sometimes you need to know, you always need to know what your money shots are, For example, in Newton, we needed a helicopter for one of the scenes. And there was some elections going on in Uttar Pradesh, so all the helicopters from that part were engaged in that election. So we had to get one from Visakhapatnam, which was costing us some insane amount of money, just for 45 minutes for the shoot. And there were other options, don't send them by helicopter, let them go by jeep. We can have a VFX helicopter, this, that. All these options were there. But we insisted on shooting with a real helicopter, which was available to us only for 40 minutes or 45 minutes. So now that was important. And then the money then you have a finite budget. So that money is taken from somewhere else. But then if this is going to make a difference to your film, then that's where the money should go. So you should know which are the shots or which are the locations where you are willing to spend, or an actor that you're willing to spend on, So that's where you're like, on Sulaimani Kid, I really wanted Razak Khan, So that's where a little bit of money went. So you have to then decide where you want to spend. And that's about budgeting. But about selling, now that's something that everyone's struggling with, How do you sell your film once it's made? And that just requires, I think, a lot of persistence and meeting the right people and hustling, yeah. So
I'd add to that, with just having watched this process happen, and having spoken to many directors who've gone through this sort of indie route all the way to festivals and then after that to try and find a sale, is that at least one thing I've heard from all of them is that there's never going to be a producer there's no magical solution where you'll work only on the creatives and a producer will handle all of the more business aspects of it. And inevitably, especially with indie films, the director, even if there is a producer on board, ends up taking a lot of producerial kind of responsibilities, or at least understanding that. So I'd say it's unfortunately it's a balance that you have that'll never go away. So that it's really important to understand what the market is, how films are working in festivals, what's happening to films after festivals, because it's very important through even how you're budgeting a film to allow for a budget for that process after. But I mean, obviously not changing how you're making a film for that, but rather trying to find a journey that suits the film you're trying to make. But yeah, it's an important part to know about. Even if you have a producer, you will end up being a producer in some way or the other.
Hi. I think one of the things which suffers in like indie or low budget films is consistency. You are shooting over a longer period of time, you're doing it guerrilla style, you're improvising, etc. And I mean, tone and rhythm, like these things which are important, you can tell that something is wrong and something is feeling inconsistent. Any tips or hacks, anything that you feel like, which can help us hold it together in a more, consistent language.
Yeah, I think in terms of color, that's essentially what we've been doing. And like I would say, like Shrimoy's film is one of those examples which she made over multiple trips and different seasons, and we kind of just found a certain palette for it, which kind of just worked for the entire film, where it doesn't feel like it's inconsistent in any way. But yeah, I mean, you'll find a good colorist, and he can give you that consistency at least in terms of image, and then you have the sound guys actually do their thing as well.
Finding people who can help craft that for you or with you through the process, whether it's in production and how you're shooting it, and in post, that is one of the challenges of your mix and of your design, is trying to make sure that you find that consistency across a project.
See, you're a director, right?
Yeah, I direct.
Writer director. So then you should be able to see the film in your head when you close your eyes. You need to be able to. It's almost like meditation. So when there are two ways of writing. One is you're sitting and writing in a linear way, logically. You're sitting on a final draft and you're just typing dialogues and you're writing action lines, dialogues. That's one way of doing it. The second way of doing it is closing your eyes, dreaming, and then seeing the whole dream, writing it on paper or recording it, and then sitting and writing it. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So once you're able to do that, and that requires focus and concentration, we're all learning. It's not easy. So the more you do that, the more you'll be able to see the film. Once you see the film, you're on set, everything goes for a toss, You've seen it a certain way, but the location doesn't look like the way you imagined it.
Yeah, I think that's where the challenge is.
Yeah. So now this is the challenge. This is where you are able to, that's why the film you make should be something that you really feel about. Because that's when you put all your energy there. It's just like, you just have to create that thing there, So you have to convince your people around you. You have to make everyone believe in it. Like, I'll give you a very simple example from Newton again. The scene where Newton picks up the gun and shows it to Atma Singh, which was the climax, right? If you've seen the movie. So on paper, it looked ridiculous. If you imagine how it's written, it felt comical, and I was actually like shitting bricks, like everyone was laughing at that climax. They were saying that kya aise gun pakdega kaise hoga and all. And then we were about to shoot. Even the actors were not really convinced. So Swapnil Sonawane came to me and said, Amit, just pretend. You have to act now. You have to be so serious that nobody can make fun of this scene, and wo automatically ho jayega. We were like full acting mode, like, of course, what do you mean gun nahi pakdega? Kyun nahi pakdega? He's angry. Ye wo. Suddenly actors mein bhi josh aa gaya, So as a director, you should also be an actor in a way, because you have to make everyone believe what you have written. So once that happened, everyone believed in it, and then that scene, nobody felt it was an issue at the edit. So you just have to believe in, and it's not like I faked it, I had believed in it when I wrote it. But when you hear 15 people say 15 different things, doubts start entering your mind. So at every moment, you should remember what was the real reason why you wrote it. It's allegorical, it's not aisa nahi ki ye actual ho raha hai. It's the whole film is an allegory for the way elections are conducted, jo bhi hai. So when you're doing it, you forget these things, you're in the moment, you're looking at little small details, this, that, 15 people are asking you 15 questions. So you just need to keep meditating. Meditating matlab not meditating, but dreaming, you need to keep, when you're on the set, keep dreaming, keep dreaming, keep seeing. So that is something that I would advise you to do.
Thank you.
We have to call it there, unfortunately. Sorry about that. But thank you to all of you. Parul, thank you for being with us from Paris.
Thank you.
Shameless is playing at MAMI this week. And to all four of you, thank you for your perspective, thank you for your insight, and thank you for your frankly insane body of work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.